and welcome to our Turning Point online service. It's so good to have you with us. Today, we know that you're going to be blessed by some worship, and also Pastor Phil is going to be sharing today. It's the start of a new year, so he's going to be talking about vision and about projecting into the good things that God has for you. Don't forget to go on to our website, www.turningpointchurches, and find out more about our physical services. Also, next weekend, why don't you go onto our website and book in for our once a year point seminar. It's going to be great. It's for all leaders, no matter where you come from. So sit back and enjoy the service.
Hello, Turning Point, and it's great to be with you again as we're starting into 2021. What a great opportunity we have to see what God's got for us. See, a lot of people are talking about the things like the Great Reset, and there's some conspiracy theories about it. There's all these different things. I want to tell you one thing. The only great reset that I know of is when Jesus came and gave himself, and he reset the potential for us to be called sons and daughters of the living God. See, today I want us to journey through and know that he has an incredible plan for our lives. And what's it going to look like? Well, the plan is a very simple plan. We need to become as Jesus was and is today. In fact, I want to start off in John chapter 17 and verse 20. And it says this, my prayer is, Jesus' prayer, that all may be one. That's what God's prayer is for us, that we'll be united as one. It goes on there and talks about how Jesus and the Father are one. The world will know that he is from God because there is unity. People will know the church is representing God because of unity, oneness. You know, today there are many people divided in many different ways. And they say that, oh, I've got to do this or I've got to do that. You know what? God says that we need to be one in unity. In fact, the Bible goes on further and says, a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. It will fail. But it goes on and says there that if we are one, the world will know who we are. See, we talk about the Great Reset. Let me tell you this. Over the next 2 weeks in our Turning Point churches, we're going to be laying out the vision of each one of the campuses. I'm going to mention something about them a little bit later. But this is the truth that I want to tell you about that's going to happen this year. We're having a new start. Our churches are back and going. The vision is going to be renewed. It's not going to be different because God has given us a clear vision of what it is. But what we're going to do is we're going to be raising up new leaders, and we're going to have a new perspective of what God has laid on us as a church to do. See, the cry is that we would bring change to the world. How do we do that? Psalm 133 puts it like this, behold how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity, as one, united, agreeing on all things. For there the Lord commands the blessing, life forever. See, I'm tired of hearing of people saying, oh, I don't like this person, or I don't like that person, or I can preach better than that, or I like this pastor preaching, or I like that musician. Do you know what? We're called to be one, to stand together as one in a family. When somebody might be younger or weaker in an area, what's the family do? They support that one until it is strengthened. They are strengthened. In a church, if we got some issues, well, we need to support one another until we become strengthened. We need to see that God has got a plan to build us as one. But sometimes we actually say, well, what's one going to do? Well, I read this some time ago and I thought this was good. So what is the value of one? Well, could you imagine a student just finishing year 12 last year and they failed? What's the value of 1 year? They're going to have to do it again. What about a mother who gives birth to a baby 1 month early, premature? Well, they know the value of 1 month because there's a lot of work looking after that child. What about 1 week? Is 1 week really that important? Well, if you're an editor of a weekly newspaper or a weekly magazine and you miss the deadline, you know the value of 1 week. What about 1 hour? Well, if you've been laying, say, sick in bed, waiting for someone to come, how long does 1 hour feel? But what about 1 minute? 1 minute can't really count unless you're 1 minute late to catch a train or a plane or some important engagement. But what about 1 second? 1 second can't be important, can it? Well, if you just missed an accident in your car by 1 second, that'd be the most precious second of your life. But what about 1 millisecond? That doesn't really count, does it? Well, just ask somebody who's just got an Olympic medal, but they only got a silver medal because they missed by 1 millisecond. See, 1 is an incredible thing. And the truth is, we need to determine what we are going to do with our 1 life, our 1 living, our 1 thinking, our 1 commitment. Because, see, we can talk a lot about it, but you know what the reality is? By yourself, you have limited power. But in relationship, working as 1, it says husband and wife, when they come together, they become 1. When they work together, that's a very powerful thing. But when husband and wife don't work together, there's a lot of pain. So it is on church. So it is in any area. See, the problem is we have all got a limited time to actually live it out. Our time on earth is limited. So we've got to ask ourselves this, what can we do? In fact, I come across these verses in Psalm 39, verse 4. Show me, O Lord, my life's end and the number of my days. Let me know how fleeting is my life. Well, that seems a bit negative. But the truth is, our life is but limited. Our eternity is unlimited. What determines our eternity is our limited life today. When we become 1 in the household of God, when we become 1 committed to his purposes, we know that we have an eternity that's exciting. It goes on there in Psalm 90, verse 10, it says this, the length of your days is 70 or 80 years, if you're strong. They pass quickly. They fly away. Now, again, that sounds a little negative, but see, I don't know about you, I'm planning to live for about 120. As long as I've got strength, I want to live for God. But say we had 75 years, and someone did this analysis, and I thought it was fun. They counted up every hour, every day of the 75 years, and they came up with this analogy, that we spend 3 years of our 75 years in some form of education. We spend 7 years eating, which that sounds pretty good to me. We spend 14 years working. We spend 5 years riding in cars or planes. We spend 5 years talking with each other. We spend about 1 year sick or recovering from sickness. We spend 24 years of our life sleeping. 3 years reading books, magazines and newspapers and maybe our smartphones now. We spend 12 years watching TV, movies, fishing, other activities. And we spend 0.5 of a year, less than half a year, going to church or being involved with church activities. When I read that, I was thinking, it's not the church activities that really is the important thing. It's about being the church in everything we do. But yet, only 0.5 of actually linking ourselves, joining ourselves. 14 years in work, 0.5 in church. 24 years in bed, 0.5 in church. See, we're going to have to pull ourselves together, not by just being together, turning up to church more. No, we need to become part of God, knowing that we are 1. We need to make the most of every opportunity we have. We need to understand what the Lord's will is for us, because, see, we're called to make an influence in this world, a difference in this world. See, Jesus himself, he was a man just born in a country where they were in slavery effectively, born to a woman that wasn't married at the time. And so People question, how can a man with such a terrible start change the world? Yet our calendars are set by him. Our laws are set by him. He had an incredible influence because he was one with the Father. Today, if we would just do the same, we can bring change. But you know, influence sometimes we think is by pressure. Influence is not what we tell people. Influence is what we are to people. People are really not that interested in what you know. They're interested about what you do. Show them the life that you have. Jesus didn't go around telling people, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. No, you know what he did? He actually showed them. And then he said, now go and do likewise. And people committed their life to him. Today, that's what we need to do. But how does that work today? Well, see, across our campuses, our Turning Point campuses, God has laid a special call on each one. So let me just go through them quickly here. In Cranbourne, Turning Point, Pastor Norma, she's been heading up the church for a number of years now. And in that church, we've seen the Turning Point School of Ministry, our Bible school, grow and grow year in, year on. And so that has now trained up over a dozen pastors, has helped people to be good youth leaders, Bible school leaders, Bible study leaders, and so on. There's so many areas that have been helped to grow. We've also been running for many years our Turning Point Support Centre, helping people with food relief, counselling, many other training courses. We've been able to establish our Turning Point Childcare Centre, and that's been running for many years now. We've got a community garden. We've also got our Lighthouse Christian College, which now has over 1,000 students, and we've planted another school up in New South Wales, and we're believing for many more. We've seen many youth groups started up. We've seen many small study groups, connect groups. But this year, one thing I want Cranbourne to be thinking about is how do we move this wall? This wall that's behind me now is in the road. We can't fit enough people in here each Sunday. So we're believing this is the year that we're going to pull the wall and enlarge this building. But what about down in Cayzer Turning Point? Well, Pastor Sean's been down there for a number of years now, and now they've got a Turning Point School of Ministry running. They've got various people being trained up, and pastors being trained through there. They've got a Turning Point Support Centre where they've been, again, able to minister into that area. But this year, they're believing to get a new building program going. They're going to build a building that can actually fit them, because at the moment they just cannot fit in the small building they've got. And this building will be able to help them with their youth activities, their Bible school activities, and they're going to continue to reach in. Down there in Cayzer, Pastor Wolfgang, another one of the pastors there, has been reaching out to the seasonal workers and ministering to their life, hundreds of them each week. And this has been going for many, many years. Over in Hallam, just last year, Pastor Sandra took on the work there, and that has been developing up as a church, and now it's been running its own support centre. We're reaching out again with food relief. They're looking up to get more youth groups started, Bible studies started, to reach in to the community around. Up in Lilydale, Turning Point, we've got Pastor Joel and Pastor Sienni up there. And up there, they've been running an incredible outreach with the food support program. And there's a very different community up there where they've been reaching and ministering into. But they've done something different. They've just now moved into the same building as their support centre for their church. And so they're going to use that as their base to impact. So pray for them as they continue to grow in multiple meetings through the week, reaching into the children and working through their food support program. Our Officer Church, we started up only about 18 months ago. And through the COVID time, the buildings have been unavailable. Well, they still are, but we're believing we're going to get another building over there that we can establish that church back up and going in that growing area. Over in Frankston, Pastor David has been ministering down there through, again, reaching into the community. He's been taking a coffee trailer and food and handing it out for many, many years now. And through that process, he's touched a number of lives, seeing many small groups started up. And now some good, strong discipleship groups. But this year we're believing that we're going to be buying a building down there and seeing the church established in a single place and using that like a beacon to reach out. Our Seaford Church, again, the hall became unavailable. It's only now becoming available again. But Pastor Margaret Asherman's put her hand up and said, I want to go down there and relaunch the church, to establish prayer groups, to make a difference in this community. But during the COVID lockdown, we didn't just survive. Some of the Filipino fellowship in our Cranbourne church decided that they wanted to get together and put together an online service which has been running through the COVID time and still running today with weekly services. And they've got weekend Bible studies, and they've been doing and reaching out, making a difference. See, Turning Point, it's not about what we do, but it's about what we are. We are an influence to our community. And that influence is going to look like more churches being planted, more outreaches happening. See, God has enabled us to do far beyond what we could ask or imagine, because God is working in us. See, through the time of, again, this COVID lockdown where we've been unable to reach out, our mission work has increased. We've opened up 2 new nations in Africa while we've been sitting here in Australia. There are now 11 nations in Africa that we've been working in. We've got 14 Bible colleges running concurrently. We've got hundreds of students being trained at this time. We've got hundreds of churches now that are working with us and hundreds more being planted. We've started some small businesses over there. We've built some church buildings. We've built some units over there. We've helped run and pioneer a school over there. See, God has enabled us to reach well beyond ourselves. It's not about that we want to do, but it's about how we become one with the vision that God's got. In India, we've been ministering there for a number of years in a well-established Bible school. We've seen over 1,000 churches planted out of that Bible school now, with 150 of them working within our own denominational structure. We've got a children's home over there which has been running for many years and seeing incredible results as these students have not only just come through off the farms, but they've now come in and been trained, and they're being completed in their training going through in university, and now they are actually able to minister back to their whole village because it's brought change to them. In the Pacific Islands, we've got many outreaches. The Philippines, there's churches there, Bible schools have been running there for a time. It's been exciting to see what God's doing. Papua New Guinea, for over 20 years, we've been helping with the Bible school there and church planting there. Vanuatu, from the people down in Kuirup, have been reaching out, and they've been leaving. They're going to plant churches and Bible schools there as they can get back onto the side. See, the question is not what we're doing, but how can we all be a part of it? How can we be one together? Well, it's very simple. There's a little boy that we read about in John chapter 6. In John chapter 6, verses 9 through to 13, there's a time where Jesus was out and he was ministering to everybody, and people were gathering around, and Jesus looked out and he saw and said, these guys look hungry. We need to feed them. And then all of a sudden the disciples started talking, probably a little bit of arguing. Who's going to pay for this? Who's going to get the food? How are we going to do it? You're going to get a trailer? What are you going to do? And they were all just wondering about what to do. And this one boy wanders up to Jesus and says, I've got some fish. I've got some buns. Will this help? Jesus simply says, I will take that and use it. See, the story is simple. This boy made what he had available. He made himself available. Too often people are thinking, well, one day we'll do this, and one day, don't worry about the one day. What are you able to offer today? Become one today. There's another story in the Old Testament, 2 Kings 5. There's a little girl. Well, this little girl was really a nobody. All she did was basically clean up and look after this particular guy who's Naaman. He's one of his wives. He was just there. And this little girl saw that Naaman wasn't well. And so she went out of her way. It wasn't her place to come and talk to somebody, and simply said things like this. Do you want to get healed? Well, I know a man that can pray for you, and then God will heal you. You never guess what happened. He went along, got prayer, and got healed. What? This little girl was bold enough to risk things and to say, well, my job's not that important. This man needs help. This man needs encouragement. This man needs the touch of God. And she was bold enough to get out of where she was comfortable to get into the place where God could use her. And there's a third thing. Well, first is availability. Second one is boldness. Third one is preparedness. We need to be prepared for what God has got for us. See, in Acts chapter 19, starts off there in verse 1, it says, Paul took the road through the interior and arrived at a town called Ephesus. Well, he found some disciples there. In fact, we find out he found 12. Not a really big group, 12 guys. But then in verse 9 it says, and Paul took the disciples with him and had discussions daily in the lecture halls. And this went on for 2 years. For 2 years, Paul worked with this church. Now, history tells us that this church grew to something like 20,000 people. Where did it start? 12. How did they get there? Someone took the time to become one with them, to train them up, to get them ready to be committed to the journey. They became as one as they saw the call ahead. See, this is the truth today. We need to become one in the church. One united, not for the church's sake, but for the kingdom's sake. See, but you might say, what can I do? Well, let me give you a little story of a guy called Albert McMicken. I bet you never heard of this guy, Albert. This guy lived some years ago, and in fact, I only know one story of him. Let me tell you his story. One day, there was going to be an outreach rally happening, and he had a buddy he wanted to take along to this outreach rally. And he didn't know how to get this guy to come because this guy liked the girls and liked the parties. And Albert goes, I've got to find a way to get him there because he needs to know Jesus. And he came up with this idea. He said, I'm going to ask him to drive the bus. And so he went along to this guy and says, could you drive the bus? Rounded up a group of people, and they drove this busload in to this outreach rally. Well, when this guy got there, this friend of Albert's, he was taken by it all. And he got so excited, he actually came back the next night, and the next night, and the next night, until he gave his heart to Jesus. And you think, oh, that's pretty great. Albert spent time and saw this one person come to know Jesus. That's really good. Except I haven't told you who this one person is. His name is Billy Graham, who's now passed on to be with the Lord. But before he went, they record over 300 million decisions for Jesus. Will you make yourself available? Will you be bold? And will you prepare? Because if you can do that and stand as one, be committed to the journey, then I can tell you God can use you. Like this guy Albert, we hardly ever hear of, but we sure know of what his work was when it brought a change to Billy Graham's life. Today, your commitment to become one with God, your commitment to become one with Turning Point, your church, will bring change to this world. Bless you as we head into this great year of 2021.
hope you really enjoyed that message and that it touched your heart. You know, if you haven't made Jesus as your Lord and Saviour, we really encourage you that in these uncertain times, Jesus can be a rock and an anchor, a hope, and give you purpose. So we encourage you once again to go on our website, www.turningpoint Churches, and there's an area there where you can click on or made a decision. It tells you more about how to give your life to Jesus and the great future He has for you. So for now, God bless you. Have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you at our next online service, Turning Point Church.